Oui, bonjour. Nicolas Abroggi de la
I'm from Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. You mentioned the negotiation on SCAF with Airbus, Airbus Defence Aerospace, and I have three questions. Do you think that there could be some failure in failing contract, and would there be a plan B for the FCAS? And is there any political support for this project? And thirdly, you've mentioned that the 2040, 2050 are more realistic as a due date for the FCAs. Could you tell us why? Now, the first question is, what do you mean by failure? To me, a failure would be that the armed forces are not happy with the aircraft we deliver. So what is really important is that we're sure, just like when you build a house, that you have the right robust and solid foundations, which do require a prime contractor and an architect who will be committing themselves so that the house will be solid because of solid foundations. And we've used explicit assumptions that any industry would abide by. That is a strong prime contractor. That's why Leonardo and myself have asked Airbus to be strong prime for this project. And we have accepted this. We just ask for reciprocal and be recognized as one key partner for the NGF. We are. This is only one part of the FCAS. It's one pillar of the FCAS, and for this particular pillar, we have been appointed to be the prime contractor, so that we ask for this to be complied with, not only in phase 1B, but up to the flight, because we want to deliver aircraft to operational armed forces. That's our commitment. This is our pledge. That's what we've asked Airbus to trust us, so that these leadership of the French by Dassault Aviation can be performed without any obstacle. It doesn't mean that we are against cooperation. We want to cooperate just like we did with New Drone with 6 countries, and this has allowed us to have a demonstrator being shown. This is what we've done with the NGF. We have a demonstrator which was compliant to the expected performance level, and even better than that, with Dassault Aviation as a lead architect of the project, and DGA, the French DGA, was the lead in this program with various partners who accepted their role. This is what we are calling for as a success. Now, if it's not possible, you might call it a failure. I'm just saying this is a reality. Is it a political project? Well, of course it is. But should a political project give preference to political constraints or preference to industrial development, which will help us to achieve a high level of performance in our armed forces? And the context is such that we should guarantee high level of performance of our armed forces. Then a third question regarding the time scale. I've said in an exaggerated fashion 2040 to 2050. But everything was to be well organized so that the first flight would be at the end of 2025, and then it was 2026, and then 2027. Now, we've lost 3 years over the last 2 years now. If I were to extrapolate on a 20-year program, I've added 10 years, so it's rather short. So what does that mean, the 2050? It means that if every 2 years or every year we have to rediscuss with our partner because they disagree with us while we are supposed to be the lead, then it's not possible unless we have all the time available. So these are the statements that I've made. Yesterday, the Tempest was presented with a 2025 for the demonstrator, 2035 for an operational aircraft. Don't you think, as my colleague said, that it will be a failure for the FCAS if there's a competition? We've seen that in Europe, some European member states would buy some American aircraft. Wouldn't they buy also aircraft from a British-Italian coalition? And what Main System has announced is in line with what I've just said. BAE System is the leader. Saab is not a co-contractant or a main partner. BAE Systems are the lead. They said we will have our aircraft flying in 2025. Okay, we'll see. It's in 3 years from now. This is what I'm asking for. I'm not opposed to a partnership with 3 partners, that is France, Germany, and Spain. Right from the beginning, this is what I said, which is quite unusual and exceptional for our group, but not with any type of organization method. I'm not saying that I'm right and that Airbus is wrong. It's just that we have diverging views. I'm asking for a strong leadership by Dassault so that we can quickly achieve the result, that is having a demonstrator flying where the specifications are more or less agreed upon by the 3 countries. And in order to get to the point, you need a leader. In the industry, when you build a high-level building or an Airbus aircraft, you have a leader. It doesn't mean that you not cooperate with others. We do cooperate with Falcons, with subcontractors, just like I do accept being a subcontractor of Airbus for Eurodrone. Airbus committed itself with OCCAR, so we'll make sure that we meet our commitments, provided Airbus also meets its commitments for OCCAR. I didn't ask for being the co-developer of Eurodrone. We've asked for some parts of the contract, and this is what made sense. It's not a duplication that's going to make Europe efficient. It's not about copying or doing the same as what others do. And that's my view. And indeed, it is a political project, and BAE is a leader, and NGF is only one pillar. As I said, Dassault should be the strong prime leader of the NGF and recognized by the 3 nations and by our main partner, that is Airbus. Once this is in black and white, there's no problem. And as Guillaume Foury said, we're not far from it, but we're not there yet. It seems to me that so far you've been quite successful. These Rafales sell like hotcakes. Falcons is all over the world. With the 10X, you've come from an industrial action which was quite difficult, but it seems to me that there will be many more obstacles, at least 2. First of all, the FCAS. Don't you think that it's just a web of, or an entanglement of impossibilities? Both countries, France and Germany, are not compatible when it comes to industrial cooperation and defense policy. And the 2 companies, Airbus and Dassault, are not compatible. Airbus doesn't have the capacity, it doesn't want to hear you the best athlete theory. So don't you have a B plan? And could you please tell us more about this B plan? The second obstacle that I foresee is this huge workload on the company. How are you going to cope? Have you planned to hire more people at the group level? And what are the profiles that you want to hire? And above all, are you going to have more people in the shop floor? This is an obstacle which is probably a challenge which is far more difficult to take up than others, because the recruitment of engineers will be faced with difficulties with many young graduate students who are demonstrating against aircraft because of CO2 emissions. How are you going to attract this new generation of young engineers? Well, thank you for highlighting all the future challenges. I'll try and answer your questions one by one. No, the non-compatibility, I think we found a solution. That is a clear leadership by Dassault on the first pillar. If it is not accepted, well, you may call it a failure, or there will be plan B, whatever it is, but there will be a plan B. But I cannot disclose anything at this stage, because the day I'll talk about it, I'll first report to the authorities, and first and foremost to the French Ministry of Armed Forces. So the time hasn't come to talk about it, but we're working on it. No, the reference to the Botte de Nevers is Lagardère is rather closer to Airbus than Dassault. So any industry should have plan B. No, this FCAF, the NGF, is still on the table. We're still working on it. But I cannot accept any conditions. And I'm not going to challenge the initial assumptions just because we have diverging views today. So I would like to be in the command and control position, and this is not accepted by Airbus. This is the only problem to be solved. Now, regarding the recruitment, in the second question, it is difficult. It is, even though we have a high unemployment rate in France, all companies in all sectors have difficulties in hiring people. But we are fortunate at Dassault, thanks to our DNA, is that people who join Dassault love aircrafts. And what you've said, and which has meant our success, is that we have programs underway, and that when we export one Rafale, you need to develop new Rafales. You need to second people all over the world to support the aircraft. And people know that they will be touching the aircraft. And we try to have some good connection between Saint-Cloud, Mérignac, and Istres, so that people still have are in touch with kerosene. Sorry for that. So, yes, we need more engineers and more trainees and interns in our shop floor. When it comes to the recruitment, it's 1,300 people for the group. At this stage, we have already hired more than 700 people, so more than 50% of the 1,300 we were planning. We've simplified the processes. We went through the fast-track process, even though we have all these clearances to go through, so you cannot hire anyone. But it's a complex, because we're cutting-edge defense industry, but we have managed. No, it's more, when it's more difficult is the supply chain. I'm also the president of the UMM, the union of the steel industry union in France. And all the companies in this sector in France have great difficulties in attracting, recruiting, and hiring. So we'll have to be attractive to have more people hired in industry. And that's why I'm champion of the industrialization of our country. And industry doesn't mean only design, it's also manufacturing and the chain of subcontractors. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be made in France, but that we have strong assets in France. So we'll have to be able to lead a policy of industrialization that everybody is calling for, even though over the last 20 years we've observed a deindustrialization of France. Maybe the COVID pandemic was an eye-opener to many people, but we'll have to help the training centers, the national education system, higher education institutions to gear these young people to the industry. But we're still fortunate at Dassault. We have a turnover which is very, very low compared with the average rate. It's a few people who resign per year. People join after their university studies and they leave when they retire. We are a small company. We're not like Lockheed or Airbus or Boeing. We have 12,000 people. We all know each other. We are all aircraft lovers, and people do not demonstrate in the streets in front of our buildings because they don't like aircraft. It doesn't mean for the same reason that there's not going to work to find solutions to reduce our greenhouse emissions. We have nice challenges ahead, but I'd rather have these challenges with a backlog and rather than having a very low level in our backlog and difficulties in hiring people. No, there are some issues that will keep us very busy for many days around.
Good afternoon. Sarah White from the Financial Times. I'd like to go back to the FCAS. So how long can you continue like this without an agreement with Airbus? And do you have a deadline to decide? And I had a question. Industrially today, what is your major challenge? Is it your supply chain or energy issues? What is concerning you most? I just wanted to have an idea about your major challenge. To answer your second question first, our major challenge is the supply chain. We have to make sure, the supply chain is huge. And by supply chain, I mean first rankers, and we work with SMEs. But each company with whom we work, they work with other companies. And when the crisis with Ukraine started, we started mapping who worked with whom until the bottom, because you have the supplies, major elements, and then you have the material also. Material, how do we secure it, etc. So that's the first challenge currently with the crisis in Ukraine, the COVID crisis, because that did not help in our logistics. It made things more complicated, and the redistribution on who is going to do what in a certain number of domains. So that's number one, really, for us. And as for the FCAS, I've already expressed myself. I'm going to say it once again. Sooner or later, we have to say go or stop. We're going to leave ourselves until the end of the year. This is what I had said. Our teams have been redistributed elsewhere. We have work. They cannot just stay for 6 months, a year without doing anything, remain idle until the deal is signed. So they have been redeployed. If we find an agreement that would suit everybody, then we'll need to have the time to remobilize our teams, to find the forces to do all this. Right now, they're doing other tasks. So we'll need time to enforce this contract if we ever manage to sign it. So the end of the year for me, so that we can make a decision in the next weeks, in the coming couple of months, end of the year. It is not an ultimatum, but we cannot just stay like that with the pen up in the air for years. Pierre Tran, SLD Info. You talked directly with Mr. Guillaume Flory. We talk to each other every day. He's the manager of GFAS. We have a lot in common, a lot of topics in common, especially the aeronautical supply chain. We're both worried about that, and we talk a lot about this. We don't talk much about the FCAS. Why? Why not? Why not? That's the question. Because the people I talk to are German and Spanish, and Guillaume Flory is not German nor Spanish. Small explanation. Well, you have a program in defense. So you have Germany, Spain, and France. And there's a champion. In Pillar 1, you have the French champion, who is Dassault, who is French, and the Frenchman managing. In Germany, you have a company called Airbus Defense Space, and the manager is German, Michael Schullem. That doesn't mean that Guillaume is not piloting the whole, but the main person is Michael Schullem for the FCAS. And you have another person in Spain, which is Airbus Spain. And when we're all three of us together, I have 2 Airbus in front of me, and then I can still talk to Guillaume. But Mr. Faure is the manager of all managers. Well, Germany and Spain, yes, he's the manager, but I'm not to deal with that, whether it's Michael or the Spanish. And the Spanish person reports directly to Michael, you see. So it's Airbus, no doubt about that. I have no doubt about who is steering Airbus. And I've precisely answered your question. A very quick question on the acceleration of the production units of Rafale. The president talked about the war economy and how far can you go in your production. Well, we had anticipated what the president was going to say because we anticipated the passage to phase 3 of Rafale. We might not need it today, but we've anticipated because we believe that we might have some other contracts. So we wanted to go a bit faster, and we were hoping to have contracts for France. We hope that batch 5 will be signed. I'd just like to remind you that for France, there was a delay in the deliveries of aircraft delivered to France. So the 4 T2, 28 aircraft, it's been a long time. We should have delivered this to France. And upon the request of the French authorities, we've delayed this, and it will be delivered only at the end of the year, 2022, and especially from 2023 onwards, plus the 12 aircraft replacing the 12 Greek ones. So that will be 40. So all these aircraft are planned according to the French military programming law. And if we have to accelerate, we will accelerate, but we need time to accelerate. We can't just click our fingers and accelerate the delivery of aircraft, fighter aircraft. So we cannot, it's not that we cannot accelerate things at Dassault, but there's the entire supply chain. And as I've been telling you, there are difficulties. So everybody should be able to accelerate at the same time. And in order to increase the pace by 1 point, it requires a year. So if you deliver and manufacture an aircraft in 3 years, the time to increase the pace, you need 1 more year. But of course, we can always make efforts and mobilize ourselves, but there is a shortage of workforce. We cannot double the production chains overnight. We won't have enough labor. We can't ask people to work day and night. And our employees agree to work overtime, and that's great because it can increase their wages. They agree to work a little more, and that's great. And we call on part-time workers, but that helps us gain time, save time, because we have to train. You hire young people, but it isn't because they come out of school that they know what is an aircraft. So the acceleration we're going through right now, well, we have to accelerate even further, and today it won't be that easy to do so. But we are discussing with the Ministry of Armed Forces on what a war economy means, and we're just beginning our discussions. So we have to think about the acquisition processes. You were talking about the FCAS. Well, you know, with the Neuron, it was fast because the Neuron was ordered, the demonstrator was ordered up to the first flight, and even the test period. There wasn't a phase 1A, 1B, 2, and endless discussions between each phase. If we had signed all these contracts right from the beginning, it would have gone faster. So it's a way we need to prepare our contracts faster. It's not only the industrialists, but it's the industrialists with the DGA, the Ministry of Armed Forces, and the budget. We need to have the budget too. So we're thinking about all this, and this is just the beginning. tell me if I'm wrong, but when on TV I saw the two Rafales colliding and landing without any problems, I thought I understood why you were so strict about the controls. They must be really robust because the two aircraft landed as if nothing had happened. Well, here more than the flight controls, it's the four-leaf clover that worked because they were very lucky. It could have been far worse. It could have ended very badly. They were very lucky. In spite of all the damage, they could go back, fly back. And it was a real miracle. We're very proud of our flight controls, as you know. But we're very proud of them because it is the cornerstone wanted by Marcel Dassault, and we've developed our capacities. Based on that, we develop our components, our electoral boards, the architecture, etc. And all this is integrated at the beginning with the design office. At the design office, even the Americans recognize that that's the place where we're the best in the world. So that's why we're very proud of this. And it's good if it can save aircraft. But we have high-performance aircraft, especially, not only Rafale, but our Falcons, too. Well, I think that we're through with all the questions for the summer. There are maybe more questions in March, but it's really great to have this exceptional number of new orders. We won't always have such semesters. So I'd like to thank you all. Wish you a nice summer, either working or on holidays for those who can take holidays. And you must take holidays from time to time to take rest. So thank you very much and have a nice evening.